What's going on YouTube? It's Wraith Designs again with another video. Today I figured I'd show off some progress of a map that I was creating for the very first Unreal tournament that came out in 1999. Now the reason I've gone back to this engine is because, well, this is where all my 3D design actually started, and I figured I'd be better off making some maps for people to play online with. I can see that there's still many groups out there, people who actually play Unreal Tournament. Whatever mods or whatever you're using for it, I'm pretty sure that this map will suffice for anybody who wants to actually have a suburban downtown sort of area to play their matches in. So today, yeah, I'm just going to show you a few things that I've done. Let me turn this into in-game view. It's going to have sound effects and all that going as well, but as you can see, skybox. I got the city in the background, stars above us here. These little flames that you're seeing are just light sources in game. You're not going to see that. They're just icons to kind of tell you where some of your light sources are. These little apple icons are AI paths, meaning for computer bots, which will follow those paths unless I add more or take them away or do whatever with them. As you can see, it was making Blockbuster. I know it's out of business, but I'm going with the early 2000s vibe for this map, simply because this is probably around the time I got into the game itself. Graphics kind of resemble that of PlayStation 2 and all that stuff, so I figured I'd keep with the time frame. Made Dollar Tree. I actually work at this place, by the way, but I figured I'd put it in my game. I've made everything on this map piece by piece, meaning that I did not import any models. I use BSB brushes, which are these right here, to create what you see. So, you know, little pieces like that, all put together to kind of make the doors. I got the glass in there as well. I'm going to be replacing these doors with mover brushes. They'll keep the same texture. However, they'll be able to move. So down the road, I will be turning these all into mover brushes, as well as the glass. Some of you might be familiar with how to create exploding walls or breakable glass. And from what I understand, because I'm still kind of trying to learn it, is that you will take a breaking glass or exploding wall actor and put it inside a mover brush. So let's say I took this panel of glass here, I turned it into an entire a special kind of brush. So as you can see, all of these, let me go to 3D. All these lines you're seeing are brushes. Okay, they've been basically put together to create the scene. Now, a mover brush would be a little different in the sense that it would actually move. It would turn purple. The wireframe would be purple to represent that it is indeed a mover brush. So anyway, let's say we had this window as a mover brush, and the reason why we're making it a mover brush is because when you do exploding walls or breaking glass, it needs to move out of the way depending on what part of it you're breaking. So let's say you made a little opening in here, okay, and you just needed it to say, well, hey, once it starts breaking, the actual brush needs to move out of the way, like disappear. So you would start, the first keyframe would be in place, the second keyframe would be off the map. So when this is hit, the breaking glass actor would take over and look more realistic. So you'll see fragments of glass hit the ground or break down and fall. Normal mover brush doesn't do that unless you animate it that way, but they're supposed to work in tandem with each other. So I'm going to be adding those to create breaking glass effects. So if a bullet hits here, there, whatever, each one is going to have its own mover brush attached to a breaking glass actor, so it would be triggered by damage done to it. So if a stray bullet goes through, smash, you know. So a little bit more realistic. I'm going to be redoing the logo here. I'm also going to be redoing the soda machines. Those are actually 3D models in the back soda machine. The rest of this, however, is not. It is BSP brushes. And is okay. Crash for a second there. I got a gaming rig, and for some reason it can't handle an old editor as well as my other computer. I don't know. Maybe that's just Windows 10. So yeah, I got Dollar Tree. Even got Blockbuster. I'm going to be adding more in here, obviously counters, columns, uh, aisles, rows of movies, games, things like that. So I got a lot of early 2000 era movies on the walls. Here, let me get this texture thing out of the way. As you can see, I've imported all these textures myself. I was kind of looking from 2001 to about 2003 era, so you're going to see some of these movies were from that time. Now, back in the day when I first started learning how to use this engine, I didn't really get too much into it. I did a few things with it and was like, alright, great, cool. I didn't pick it up until a few years later, and then kind of put it down again. I would have to say around 2010, I really started picking this back up and learning more about it. So I was a little bit of a late blossomer there to get into the 3D modeling, but I finally did, and thanks to this program, the concepts were already with me. So I've changed, the walls yellow, red, kind of like some of the blockbusters you'd see. Thinking about maybe doing extensions here for the doors like the real buildings they used to have. So have it come in, doors on the side, maybe a counter in the front here, things like that. I'm going to try to make it as realistic as possible, but not too difficult or system demanding to run. Believe it or not, these BSB brushes do take up memory. Anyway, again, all these textures I've made myself. Some of them I found online and imported them, like this one right here. But you could make your own. So if you know exactly what the dimensions are going to be, how it's going to look when you stretch it out, things like that, and keep that in mind, you can create your own textures and bring it into the game. These telephone poles here are done with BSB brushes. They are not 3D models. Same thing with the little overhangs here. I still have to add the top light part to them, but I got the effect already. Trying to see if there's a way I can maybe make one of these without the corners, but usually don't see it. Got the light cones there underneath the street lights. Traffic lights, I'm going to push these more out towards the middle of the road here. They're a little short, so I'll have to go through that again. Thinking about maybe using triggers where I'll put sort of like these lights over here, as you can see. I'll make smaller flares that are red, yellow, and green, and make them turn on and off depending what time it is, time them with other lights so it looks realistic, like one way is going and the other one has to stop and so forth, just for realism. I know it's an old engine, but hey, you can pull off a lot of stuff with this. Again, I'm making some homes over here. These are just basically empty husks. The floor halfway up is another floor. Start putting walls in here, and kind of separate the room into first floor and second floor, actually make it a house. I was thinking about putting a basement in some of these. I will be creating a sewer system. I'm already working on the manhole. Well, that's already done actually. It's just a manhole design that when you walk over it, it'll open up. I have to add some sound effects to it as well. But for the most part, that's working. I can make the underground sewer system through every street. The reason I'm doing this is because for the mod that I'm mainly designing this for is Infiltration 2.9 Community Edition. Now, this is an older mod that came out a few years back, I think in 2007. That's basically kind of like Rainbow Six in a way. It's more realistic with weapons, soldiers, the fatigues, things you can wear, armor. But it's not Rainbow Six, so I mean, people had to create their own models and animation and gun sounds and all that. So I have a few other videos on my channel. Some of the first few videos I have actually are of that mod and another map that I created. But as you can see, the map's coming along. I mean, it's got a lot of work to go. I got some actual 3D models for trees. Figure it'd look a little better with actual 3D trees and bushes. I'll be adding some ponds, lakes, things like that. So I'm just kind of showing off a few things in here, not going too crazy with it, but I wanted to test this out. I've even made the hedges just big enough where you can snipe over them, but if you crouch, you're hidden behind them. It's another thing that I'm keeping a close eye on, is scaling. This way, when you're playing your character, depending on what weapon you're using, you're going to want to have cover, because this isn't like normal Unreal Tournament, this mod that I'm using. It's a few shots and you're dead. So you're gonna have to be smart. You'll be able to crouch and go prone, things like that. Um, but as you can see, now I will open up the texture browser, kind of show you guys the textures that I've created and imported. Many different ones. As you can see, a bunch of movie posters that I had in there, as well as some textures for like soda machines, vending machines, aisles for stores. I'm going to make a supermarket as well, Taco Bell, 7-Eleven, things like that. I'm going to add some more shops around here, thinking about a movie theater, possibly a library, apartment buildings, things like that. So it's going to get pretty extensive in a sense of being more of a realistic level. But I was able to import these. Now I have a video on my channel that explains how to do this, but I will explain it really quickly for those who don't feel like going all the way back and watching that video. So each one of these textures, the way I was able to create my own and bring them into the engine, for many people who are probably wondering, I know that when I tried to do it and didn't know what I was doing, it wouldn't work, so I kind of gave up on it. What you want to do is make sure that your textures, this is brought into a program like Photoshop or Paint Shop Pro or GIMP. Now the theory is the same. It pretty much works across the board. Depending on whatever program you're using, you'll know what to do. You want to take in an image and make the image size the power of 2 or power of 10 or whatever. And by that I mean like 1024, 516, 256 by 256, and so on. You want to do it kind of lower. You don't want to go to 2048. This is an older engine. It's not really going to take it too well. But if you want to make textures, you got to have them at the power of 2. So it's always kind of doubling, right? So Unreal Engine will only accept that type of image size. Now what will happen is, even though you change that size in, like, say Photoshop or something, and it looks all stretched out and out of proportion, Unreal Engine will remember the original size of the photo when you bring it in. So even though it's stretched out, it will retain its quality. So it's just a method for it to accept it into the program, so don't worry about that. Another thing you need to worry about is when you actually create a texture and you bring it into Photoshop, let's say, after resizing it, you want to export as. You don't want to save as. Now I know some people go and say, well, I'm going to say this is a GIF like he's saying, or what I'm about to say. You can do that, but you want to make sure that you do it the proper way. And the reason why I say export it as a GIF is because it will automatically turn it to 8-bit. Be sized just properly. It will be an 8-bit pictures, which it needs to be accepted. And then you will be able to re-import that GIF back into the program and then save as PCX file. And that's the file that Unreal 2.0 accepts. So again, first thing you want to do, resize the image to a power of 2, so it'd be like 256 by 256 or 512 by 512, 1024 by 1024, and so on. You want to export as a GIF. This way all the parameters will be set up. 8-bit image will be already in the image file, and then you can open that back up after saving it and then save it as a PCX. Now that's the process, so the best way to do it is that way. Again, I have another video on here if you want a more in-depth explanation on that. So another thing is, if some of these textures, you can actually up the quality a bit. Now it's not going to be a huge jump, but it's definitely going to make it look a little better in-game when you actually play it. You also have some surface properties as well that you can change. Some other properties here. So you have different things to edit if you wanted to on each texture after you bring it in. So again, this is how I brought my textures in. Took a while, but once you have a texture palette, you want to save it. Now I didn't go all out and do the second category like I probably should have. I just want to show them all here. I could probably do this later, but you want to probably under your texture pack name, you want to make the subcategory like doors floors, walls, ceilings, types of wood, types of rock, whatever. However deep you want to go, you want to categorize your textures properly so you know where they're going to be. As long as you save this, okay, once you create it, you want to save this because the level is dependent on those textures. If you do not save them, there's a chance your level won't open again at all. Or if it opens, you're missing a lot of textures. So you want to make sure that you save this texture file in your Unreal Tournament folder. So I'll do that right now just to show you. So I'm going to save, okay, it's already called Suburbia, so I already have that in my textures file under C, Unreal Tournament Textures. Another thing is this, you want to make sure that you install Unreal Tournament on your C drive. Don't put in program files or anything like that. For some reason, the editor itself does not like long file names, and sometimes even though you have everything that you need to make the map work, it won't open because of a glitch in the editor. So you want to make sure that your Unreal Tournament is in the C drive. So that being said, here I am saving that. Place it, yes. So it just saved all my textures into this palette. So again, I could always save it to something else, call it something different, so it's a little easier to identify, but pretty obvious what this is. So I am viewing this in Direct 3D. They have a software renderer if you don't have a 3D card for some reason. This game you could actually play without a 3D card. Back when it came out, it was ahead of its time. This was actually, my personal opinion is the beast that took out Quake, ID Software, Doom, things like that, and all these other games back in the day. I mean, this was ahead of its time, still is. Now, if you ever heard of Unreal Editor or Unreal Engine, this is where it came from. So if you know about 4 or Unreal Development Kit and things like that, this is where it started. Technically, it started with the first Unreal game, not Unreal Tournament, but this is the second version of the very first editor. It is a little glitchy, it is a little bit unstable, but it does work if you know what you're doing. So I got some models in here, as you can see, some cars. Don't look the greatest, but just kind of get the point across, really. Got some trash bins here. Payphone, Again, like I said, this is going to be early 2000s, so it's before we all had smartphones and Blackberries. If anything, you were getting a track phone or a Boost Mobile or maybe a Razor phone, you know what I'm saying? So I will be editing the interior of each building here. I usually try to keep it simple, so if I say, I'm going to build this building here, I'll copy the layout for this one to here. I might change a few things like the front doors or something, but it's easier for the computer to process similar models. At least that's what's happening to me. I don't know if that's the same case here for the editor, but in any game design, for a game to load models that are different, it takes a little longer and takes up more system RAM. So I'm basically using the concept of copy and paste and utilizing the same design except changing a few things inside, textures, things like that. So let me change this to software mode. As you can see, it's changed a little bit, got a little brighter. Some of the textures here look a little sharper. That's one thing with DirectX. It smooths out the textures a little too much. There must be a way that I can maybe fix that. I know somebody said that there's a way to make HD textures appear in-game, but it's not advisable to try to use them in the editor as it crashes a lot. So I know there's a way to replace them. Once you've edited the level and you have all your textures, if you have an HD version of that texture, you can replace these with that. Also, you can use bump maps. Believe it or not, this engine lets you use bump maps. So you can create bump map versions of each texture and then import them. So, yeah. Ain't much right now. Again, I've only got certain things like street lights and telephone poles, a few traffic lights, things like that. I'll be adding more street lights as well. I'll be adding probably a skate park, basketball court, tennis court maybe, a few more houses, apartment buildings, all sorts of stuff. I'm thinking about maybe adding a kind of like a strip mall in one of these little areas here. But either way, thanks for watching. Hope you learned a few things, and please, yeah, Share with your friends, subscribe, like, do whatever you want. I'm here just kind of show people some cool things. So, alright guys, sorry it's been so long. I'll try to put out some more videos soon. And I will catch y'all later. Peace.